Hey everybody, how's it going? I'm Sethum and welcome back to another video, folks. Today in this video I am going to be showing you everything that you need to know about breeding in Ark, and of course specifically talking about breeding mutations and how to stack mutations so that you end up creating those wonderful super dinos for your army. Now we're going to look at every single thing that you need to know, starting from how to size up stats, how the breeding works, and of course we're going to look at all the little details to help you guys understand everything that there is to know about breeding in Ark, and of course getting those mutations. So let's start with the beginning. Each creature will have a set number of stats at level 1. As it gains in levels, the game will attribute it random stats. When you tame a creature, of course, it will gain an additional number of stats depending on how many levels it gets. I'm going to use this over here. So these are my battle bred shadow mains, and of course the unicorns that I've been working on. So based on what I said, before you even start breeding anything, you need to understand that we are talking about the stats after taming. So we don't care about the stats that you put on. So whatever point you put into any whatever stat does not matter for breeding. So as you can see right here, we have a variety of creatures that have all different levels. These are the basic levels after taming, so to speak. Now I'm going to start off with these unicorns right here. These will be basically what you end up getting. So the idea is to tame as many of the same creature if you are looking for specific stats. So say for example, in this video I'm going to be referring to health and damage. Of course I am using the unicorns, so for example all of these stats will be random as the creature levels up. They will be different from one creature to another depending on how the game attributed it. It is quite random. However, the point of this particular first part of the breeding is to get these stats that I'm showing you off of both of these unicorns bred into one pair. So that would be one female, one male. Notice that these are basically the original parents right here, so we don't really have anything in patrilineal, nothing in matrilineal. Let's talk about patrilineal and matrilineal. Basically, if you see matrilineal, that is the mother's side, and of course if you see patrilineal, that is the father's side. Each of these will have 20 mutations that you can stack. Once you exceed that 20 number, anything past that will not count. You can continue of course to breed those mutations, but they will just not count, so there's no point in doing so. Now, very important, as I mentioned before here, is we are working with the base stats after taming or after breeding. Alright, anything you add on top of that through mutations, of course through mutagen or leveling up, does not count and should not be considered. So for that reason, I personally prefer not to add any levels on my creatures that I choose to breed. Alright, so what we want to do is breed these two original pairs right here. So this is what I'm using, and we want to stack both of the all the best stats onto one male and one female. Now as you do this, you will get different level unicorns. As you see right here, these are all offspring of the original pair that I have there. And if we go into any of these unicorns inventory right here, as you can see, we now have the matrilineal, so 0 of 20, 1 of 20. You got a mutation right here. So obviously this is a no-go because it did not breed all of the best stats onto one creature. However, of course, with each mutation, this is quite important to note, you will get 2 levels on that creature. Now of course, also part of that mutation, you will get a random color in one of the color regions for that creature. Each creature will have a variety of color regions. Going back to the Equus right here, as you can see, they are all random in stats. They're close to each other, but of course I have not yet successfully managed to get all of the best stats or all of the highest stats off the female and the male all into one. But once you do that, you get yourself your basic breeding pair. Now I personally like to name mine just so I understand what I'm working with, and of course keeping them stored in cryopods, it does help me locate them easier. So I tend to go with base male stats and base female stats or something along those lines. I suggest you do the same. It just helps you locate everything. So this is what you'll end up with. So for example, no mutations, and we have all of the best stats. These are the parents right here of this particular shadow main. This is what I got them from, basically. And as you can see right there, I've also named them as well. So we have the parents, and I like to name the parents with the HP or the best stat that I was after, and of course damage. Now going back to what I was saying earlier, I like to breed them for damage and health. So this is the health right here, and this is the damage. Of course, all stats on both of these shadow mains are exactly identical, and so that means we have a higher chance. So look over here, this is of course the parents, so we do the exact same thing on the female. And so this is the base breeding pair. Now from here on, what you want to do is you want to breed these right here, and we are looking for mutations. Notice the level of both of these creatures is 244. So as you breed, you get 2 points per, or 2 level points in each creatures. I like to work with 2 separate breeding lines. So for example, I will breed one stat, for example, and then work on the next one. So over here we have the damage mutation. We gained 2 levels. If we look at this right here, we can see that we've gained a couple of points in the damage stat for this particular creature. Going forward, I will now breed, of course, this mutation with the original parent. So for example, if this was a male, I will breed it with the base female, or if it is a female, you breed it with the base male until you get the next mutation. Of course, it is quite random what mutation you will get, so this will take a lot of time, and I am not kidding. And of course, over here we have the HP mutation. Same story, different stat. And of course, as you can see, we have one random mutation. As it says right there, it is quite random, but the aim of the game is to stack the mutation. So once you have your first mutation that you want, you basically breed that mutated creature back to the parents until you get another mutation on top of that. Of course, we are looking specifically only for health mutations, so that is what we're paying attention. Notice that the health on this creature has gained a slight boost from that. We have one mutation in each of the parent lineages, basically. And as you can see right here, if we look at the colors, now of course the shadow mains have a couple of color regions. You can see that from the first one to the second one, we gain a different color on the little feathers, flaps, whatever you want to call them, around the head. And then if we look at the third one, the body color is completely different. Now bear in mind that we are breeding them back to the original parents, so there's a good chance that the next creature will retain most of the original parents' colors. So that is quite important to know. So over here, as we look, just pay attention to the levels and of course to the colors. Notice that they are quite different in colors right there. So from 1 to 2 to 3. Now I like to name them so I know what level of mutations I'm at. So keep in mind, going back to what I said before, we cannot, you can stack more than 20 mutations in one stat should you choose to do so. However, it is not worth it because anything past 20 will not count. So just have a look right here. So I normally like to put the letter that symbolizes the gender of the creature, what number of mutations I'm on, and what type of mutation it is. So of course you can do this with as many types of stats as you want. I don't recommend going past 3 stats. So if you want to say, for example, mix health with damage and say let's say stamina for a flyer, because flyers have poor stamina, then you can do that. I generally like to make a decision on 2 particular stats. So eventually you'll end up in this situation where you will have a creature with 20 mutations in whatever stat you have been working on. So in this case, of course, this is 20 mutations in HP. So in my case, I got twinsies, which is kind of good. Same thing on the damage line. So you start working on the next stat over here. This is what we're looking at. So this is the parent right here. As you can see the difference. Of course, each creature will have a specific amount by which the stat will go up depending on the creature and of course how many mutations you're in. So as you can see right here, this is the way I've labeled them. It does help me look and keep a a very sharp eye on where I'm at with regards to progress, especially when storing them in the cryopods. You can see differences in colors as well. Sometimes, of course, you may get a difference in color with a mutation in a region that is not an active region. So you'll end up in this scenario right here. Of course, bear in mind, we do not imprint on them at any time. It does help with keeping track of what you're doing. Now, this is quite important here because I have not covered it. Patrilineal and matrilineal lineages, basically. Now, you come to the point where, for example, you have your 20 mutations in health and 20 mutations in damage. It's time to combine them into the final product. However, if both of the creatures that you have at the end are in patrilineal or matrilineal, that will not work. If you breed those creatures, you will end up with 40 mutations in patrilineal or matrilineal. So what you need to do is, basically, in my case, I had both creatures, both final products with the mutations in patrilineal. In this case, if it is, for example, a female, I will breed it back to the male until I get the gender that I need to continue the breeding, and obviously swap the mutations from one ancestry to another. So for example, right here, both of them are in patrilineal, both of them are females, as you can see. So my job was quite easy in regards to this. I just chose to breed this. So this was the HP mutations back to the original parent until I got a male, and of course the mutation stat kind of swapped over. So as you can see right here, this is the twin right here. So I'll show you this. This is the exact same thing as that. Of course, as you breed, you will get twins and triplets, and sometimes you can even get mutations that stack. So you can get 2 mutations on one creature. It is a very rare occurrence that happens, but it does happen. So behind me, of course, is the male version of these with the lineage swapped over to the matrilineal. So basically the way this works is quite simple. The parent that has the mutations will pass it on to the baby. So the mother has the mutations, then of course it will come from the mother's side, therefore matrilineal. If the father has the mutations and it passes it on to the baby, then it's patrilineal. So this is what you need to mind. And so basically the aim of the game is to get 20 stack of mutations, or a stack of 20 mutations from the patrilineal side, combined with a stack of 20 mutations from the matrilineal. So as you can see right here, I have bred these females with the original male to get them into the matrilineal, and this is the final product. When you get to this point, most of your job is already completed. So what you have to do is you have to breed these, or the stats that you have now completed, stacking together to get the final product. Just keep in mind, matrilineal and patrilineal, you need to have basically 2, or the parents need to have 1 stack of mutations in matrilineal and the other stack of mutations in patrilineal, and you'll end up with something like this. So as you can see, notice the levels, they are level 324, and if we go into ancestries, so these are the stats right here. Final stats, no mutagen, no point allocated whatsoever. This is what it came as. Now this is quite important to know, because on top of this we have, so as you can see right here, the mutations, 20 in matrilineal, 20 in patrilineal. So what I like to do from this point forward is I like to keep these 2 first breeding or bred fully mutated creatures as the original breeding pair for my army of super mutated creatures. I do the exact same thing. These will be the parents from which I will then breed my army. Now keep in mind that on top of the stats that you saw there, they were not imprinted. Imprinting on them will give you a certain percentage boost on the stats that they already have, which of course does make a big difference. And of course you also have the mutagen, which you can add at the end of it, and of course that will give them another extra additional boost in the stats. Now of course all of these boosts in the stats of the creature are even before you start leveling them up, of course, because they already have a lot as to the stats that you've bred. When you do level them up, they will gain a certain percentage per level, which will of course push their stats even higher. So that is how you end up breeding some super amazing and overpowered creatures here on Ark. Of course, this is a task that takes a long time. It is, from my perspective, a bit more challenging with creatures that do give life births, like of course the shadow mains. I find it easier with the egg laying creatures because you can always just stick them eggs into an incubator and you can see what you get over there in terms of stats and decide if you want to keep it or not. So of course, different processes, different pros and cons for breeding them. Of course, breeding for mutations, whether it is a creature that gives birth to the baby or lays egg, is the exact same. Nothing changes. It's just I find it easier to work with eggs, where of course you have the incubator nowadays and you can actually see the stats of the baby in the egg before you decide to hatch it. So you can either destroy it or keep it depending on what you're looking for. As I said, you can mix and match whatever stats you want. You can go 4 or 5 stats if you have multiple stats. Basically, the way I would suggest you do is you decide what stat or how many mutations in a specific stat you want. You work on that mutation, then basically move on to the next mutation, and just keep in mind the magic number is 20, so there's no point in trying to exceed that. For example, you can have 10 mutations in health and 10 mutations in damage, 10 mutations in stamina, and of course 10 mutations in, I don't know, food, for example, if you want to have a mixed creature. That is basically how it works. At the end, you can combine all of these. Just keep in mind what I showed you about the matrilineal and patrilineal trees, because that is going to come into play when you want to combine them. That is pretty much it for this video, folks. That is how breeding works. I hope I did do a good job of explaining it. It is, I guess, to one who hasn't done it before, quite a complicated task. I did try and use the game itself instead of doing a slideshow like I did last time. Hopefully this gives you a good idea of what you can do, and you can achieve quite a couple of things. Of course, if you want, you can also save some color mutations to add in later once you have your final babies or your final mutated creature that you intend to then breed and build your army off of. That is pretty much it for this video, folks. I do hope that you have enjoyed it and found it useful and informative. If you have, please don't forget to share, like, and subscribe. And of course, you can always leave a comment down below with your thoughts on it. And hopefully you find this good enough to help you along the path of breeding creatures for mutations in Ark. Until next time, stay safe, folks.